3 years ago today, March 1st, 2023, I took delivery of this 2023 Bolt EUV. And here's the timing. The new 2027 Bolt is hitting showrooms right now, like the one you're seeing on the screen. There are so many potential owners who might like to know how this car is holding up. Well, let me give you the numbers up front. From March 1st, 2023 until March 1st, 2026, I put 84,073 miles on this car. And just from February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2026, I drove more than 27,000 miles. That's real world high mileage use. Now, if you've watched my channel, you know I made a video called Why I'm Done with GM, and I stand by that. GM as a company has made some terrible decisions. But here's the thing, this car, this product, it's been exceptional. So in this video, I'm going to focus on the good stuff, the stuff the fossil fuel industry does not want you to know. The real data from 3 years and 80,000+ miles of EV ownership. Join me for this review, shall you? One of the biggest pieces of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt that you'll hear about EVs is that they're expensive to own. Oh, the battery's gonna die, or oh, the maintenance is crazy. And the list goes on and on and on. And by the way, I have used 349.6 of the estimated 1,000 battery cycles this battery is capable of during its lifetime. This means I will have 240,000+ miles on this battery when it hits 1,000 cycles. Stick around, I plan on doing that. I'm going to do my dead level best to make it happen sometime between 2032 and 2033. And as for spending, let me show you exactly what I have spent. Over 84,073 miles of electricity versus gasoline. At home, I'm charging at about 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. On the road, I have spent about 1,100 and change, averaging about 34.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But that's only about 14.6% of my charging, 14.6% of the miles I've put on this car. 85+% is at home. Compare that to a comparable gas SUV getting, let's say, 25 miles per gallon, and at the average cost per gallon over a 3-year period, that is 3.05 here in the state of Florida for that 3-year period, that would have been around 3,362 gallons of gasoline at a cost of 10,200 and change. My total cost for all charging, both on the road and at home, has been $3,375. That's a savings of 67%. So right there, I've saved over $6,800, almost $6,900 in fuel costs alone over 3 years. Period. Argue till you're purple, those are the real numbers. Now, the maintenance cost. Here is where it gets even better. Oil changes, 0. Brake service, 0. That's because of regenerative braking, baby. So what have I spent my money on? Cabin air filters, cooling loop maintenance, and alignments. That's it for routine maintenance aside from tires, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Now, as far as my insurance goes, it's pretty comparable to what I had been paying for a similar gas car. Maybe slightly higher because it's an EV. But we're talking maybe $50 to $100 more per year. That's not a deal breaker, and if it is for you, I'm sorry. Now, depreciation, that's where it gets real. EVs took a hit when GM dropped the prices and when the used EV market got flooded. But here's the thing. I bought this to drive it, not to flip it. And the money I'm saving on fuel and maintenance, for me, that more than offsets the depreciation hit. Not to mention, depreciation for gas cars might not come on as fast, but by the time both vehicles are sitting at 100,000 miles, they are dead even in terms of percentages of lost value. This is something nobody wants to hear, but you can go out and do the research for yourself. It's easy to do. So the bottom line, at over 84,000 miles, I've saved approximately $7,385 in fuel and maintenance compared to a similar gas vehicle. And that includes the cost for the failed telematics control unit and the antenna that I had to replace late last year. That's still real money sitting in my pocket instead of going to the big wigs in the fossil fuel cartels. So let me break down my charging habits, because this is where EVs really shine. And we're going to go into the home versus public charging. Now, 85% of my charging happens right here at home, right here in this garage. I plug it in when I get home, just like I did today, and I wake up to a battery that's ready to go. It's like having a gas station in your garage that costs a fraction of what you're going to pay at the pump. Now, the other 15%, that's road trips and the occasional top up when I'm out running errands. That can be about equivalent to the price of gasoline. But I don't do that very often, and the savings add up very quickly. Now, at home, I'm paying an average of about 11.5 cents per kilowatt hour. The Bolt EUV has averaged 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour over those 84,000 miles. So I'm spending roughly 4 cents per mile to make this thing go from point A to point B. Now compare that to a gas car that had to pay an average of $3.05 a gallon over the same period of ownership that I've had this vehicle, and it's getting 25 miles per gallon. That's about 12.5 cents per mile. I'm spending a third of that. Now, 27,000 miles in 1 year. Let me put that into perspective. Last year, I drove over 27,000 miles. Now, that's a lot of driving. If I'd have done that in a gas SUV, I'd have spent about $3,294 on fuel. And including fast charging, I've spent about $1,280. That's not bad. On the environmental impact side of things, here's the kicker. Every mile I drive is a mile that's not burning gasoline. That money's not going to the fossil fuel cartels. That CO2 is not being pumped into the atmosphere. And over 84,000 miles, I've pumped about 9.3 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere using the worst case mix for electricity that I put into this car. It's actually a little bit less here on the grid that I happen to be on here in Florida. But for a gas car, that would have been about 44 tons of CO2. That means I pollute at a rate about 21% that of a gas car, 1/5 as nasty. That's incredible. Now, let's talk about reliability, because this is another area where the FUD is thick. The good news is the drivetrain, 0 issues. The electric motor has been flawless. There's no transmission, just a gear interchange there. It's just a single speed reduction gear. What about battery thermal management? Well, that's worked exactly as it's designed. The active liquid cooling keeps the battery happy, even in extreme temperatures. And what about the electrical systems? Again, rock solid. The power delivery, the regen braking, the charging system, all of that has worked absolutely perfect. But then again, none of what I just talked about as far as the drivetrain was actually made by General Motors. It was made by LG Chem. Now, the not so good news is that I'm not going to sit here and tell you this car has been perfect, because it has not. The telematics control unit, that is the TCU, failed. And that's the module that connects the car to OnStar and handles some of the connected features. Cost me money to get it fixed. I also had the antenna failure that I told you about just a few minutes ago. Again, not a drivetrain issue, but annoying, and it cost money. And that leads us into the dealer experience. This is where GM's corporate problems show up, and they show up big. The dealerships are still stuck in the world of internal combustion engine vehicles. They make money on service, and on EVs, they don't need much service. So when you need something fixed, the experience is extremely frustrating. They're not incentivized to support EVs because maintaining an ICE vehicle is way more profitable for them. Way more profitable. And when you drive into the average dealership here in the USA with a problem on your EV, most of them, if not all of them, will charge you 2 hours labor just for a diagnosis. They do not do that for gas cars. And for your understanding, an EV can be diagnosed by the manufacturer at a dealership using the software system in well under 10 minutes. They know that. But the dealership model means they have to make money somehow on these newfangled EVs. And they stick it to EV owners, most of them. As far as software updates and recalls, there have been few software updates. But on this particular car, no recalls. The bottom line is, at 84,000 miles, this car has been more reliable than any internal combustion engine vehicle that I've ever owned, mechanically. The stuff that broke wasn't the electric drivetrain. It wasn't the important electronics, it was some of the ancillary electronics. The same OnStar junk that is in every General Motors vehicle. The core of the car, bulletproof. The peripherals that were holdovers from the ICE era, junk. Pure, unadulterated junk. All right, let's talk about this big elephant in the room. The thing the fossil fuel industry loves to fearmonger about. Battery degradation. Oh, the battery's gonna die in 3 years. Well, 3 years old, 84,000 miles, still running. You'll have to replace it at a cost of $20,000. Well, again, let me show you the reality. 349 out of 1,000 possible charge cycles at 84,000 miles. If this car makes it to 240,000 miles, the battery will definitely outlast all the mechanical components on the car. When this car was new, the battery had a usable capacity of 65 kilowatt hours. Now, I know some of you are going to say it's 64 kilowatt hours, and we can argue back and forth until we're purple in the face, and I don't care what anybody else says. 65 kilowatt hours at 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour is 247 miles, and that was the range expected when this car was new. Go back and do the math. Argument over. Now, after 84,000 miles in 3 years, I'm still at over 62.5 kilowatt hours. That's less than 4% degradation. Let me say that one more time. That's less than 4% degradation after 84,000 miles. But I've treated this thing right. Now, what does that mean in practice? Basically nothing. My range is almost identical to when I bought the car. But range is seasonal, and it's also based on your driving style. If you drive like Mario Andretti at the Indianapolis 500, you're not gonna get 240 miles of range. Let's make that clear. Recently, with all my trips back and forth dealing with my brother's health issues, I was averaging about 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour because I was out on Interstate 4 driving 70 and 75 miles per hour 5 days a week, sometimes 6 or 7. But the truth is, if I could get 247 miles on a charge when it was new, I can still get 237.5 miles now. And most people will never notice the difference because of how they drive or the seasons of the year. The colder, the worse the mileage. Now, not all EVs are created equal. Go back and look at some of the older designs like the Nissan Leaf with air-cooled batteries. Those degrade much faster. You can lose 15 to 20% in a year. And that's the thing that the fossil fuel industry spreads FUD with. Hey, look, the Nissan Leaf lost 20% in just about 50,000 miles. Well, the Bolt has an active liquid cooling on the battery, and that makes a huge difference. The battery stays optimal and it stays at the perfect temperature, and degradation therefore is minimal. Industry data backs this up. Bolt batteries are consistently showing excellent longevity. We're talking 90+% capacity or better at 100,000 miles for the entire fleet. Now, my charging habits are very typical for an EV owner. I charge at home overnight, usually to 80% unless I need more range the next day. And I try to keep it above 20% even when I'm on the road. As far as DC fast charging goes, I do it when I need to, but that is not my daily routine. I've actually done more DC fast charge sessions since November than I did in the previous 2.5 years, and that's probably why this battery is holding up so well. No extreme charging habits, just normal everyday use. And I have a video about that linked in the description below. Please be sure to watch that. Now, if I'm losing less than 4% over 80,000 miles, what does that look like at 150, 200, 250,000 miles? Simple math says I'll still have 90% capacity or better at 200,000 miles. But loss is slow and taper to almost nothing at about 150,000 miles. And 200,000 miles, that's the typical lifespan for most cars. How many internal combustion engine cars have you owned that have 200,000 miles or more on them? And tell me they weren't burning oil or leaking all over the driveway at 200,000 miles. The battery is not going to be the limiting factor on this car. Never has been and never will be. Battery degradation is one of the biggest FUD talking points out there, and at 84,000 miles, I can tell you it's total nonsense. I could think of another word, but nonsense will work in this case. This battery is holding up better than any gas engine I've ever owned, period. And I drove a Ford F-150 for almost 150,000 miles before I sold it because it was leaking like a sieve. Another story altogether. Now let's talk about tires. EVs are 10 to 20% heavier than gas cars, not twice as heavy as EV haters around the world would like you to believe. And there's been a ton of FUD that tells you that you're going to burn through tires like a hot knife through butter. But let me show you what I've actually experienced. This is set number 3. I installed them on February 7th of this year. The original tires were the Michelin Energy Saver All Seasons with self-seal feature, and they lasted about 41,000 miles. Not bad for an EV. Now the second set I did a video on were the Nexen N5000 Platinums. They also lasted about 41,000 miles. So at about 82,000 miles, they were replaced with the Kinergy STs. These are Hankook Kinergys. And I will go over those in just a few minutes, but let's talk about the first set. The Michelins were fine, good fuel economy, or I guess electron economy, but the wet performance was pretty pathetic. And they were noisy in corners, and the self-seal feature, well, you can take that and put it in one of these swamps around here. It's supposed to self-seal small punctures automatically, but I never had a puncture to test it. And the tires felt a bit stiffer because of the sealant layer inside the tire. So when I replaced the Michelins, I went to the Nexen N5000 Platinum because it had better wet performance. And I live in Florida. The roads are wet most of the summer. It's much better, but the rolling resistance was higher, so I lost a little bit of range, maybe 5 miles per charge, so 5 miles over 200. Still, they lasted 41,000 miles, the same as the Michelins. Now, the third set is the Hankook Kinergy ST-H735, if you want to know the exact model. And here's why I chose them. First, they had the same grip as the Nexen. They were lower priced than the current Nexen N5000 Platinums by about $25 a tire. And they also had better rolling resistance than the Nexen, so I should get back some of the range that I lost with the Nexens. It's an upgrade in every way. Better efficiency, same performance, lower cost. And oh, by the way, these are the same tires that ship on many new Tesla Model 3s and Model Y, so keep that in mind. And they're not EV-only tires. That's something else that you need to understand. So let's do the math. 41,000 miles per set. That's excellent for an EV tire that's only rated to 50,000 miles. Gas cars might actually get the 50,000 miles out of a set, but EVs have instant torque and tend to eat through the rubber just a little bit faster. So 41,000 is really good. And by the way, when I replaced the tires, they were at 3 30-seconds, not 2 30-seconds that the NHTSA folks recommend. I always replace my tires a little bit earlier. Safety is my first consideration. And this third set of tires should take me well past 120,000 miles. Now, if you own a Bolt EUV, here's what I recommend. Look for tires with a low rolling resistance. It makes a difference in range. Don't cheap out. You want good wet traction and decent tread life. The self-seal feature is optional. I didn't find it necessary. You might, so you might go back to the original Michelins. And budget around $600 to $800 per set installed, depending on the brand. That's what I recommend. Now, let's say I spend about $700 for a set of tires and I get 41,000 miles. That's about 1.7 cents per mile for the tires. And that's totally reasonable. Anything under 2 cents per mile is great. Now, the bottom line is, after achieving 41,000 miles per set, tire longevity on this EV is good. And this is the third set. I'm upgrading efficiency while maintaining performance. Tire wear is not an issue with this car because I do not drive like the aforementioned Mario Andretti. All right, let's talk about what it's like to actually live with this car day to day, because specs and numbers are one thing, but how does it feel? For daily driving and comfort, after 3 years, I still enjoy driving this car. The instant torque is fun. It's not a sports car, but it comes quick off the line. I'll never go back to an internal combustion engine polluting car. It's quick and it's smooth. When I get into a gas car these days, I find myself wanting to get out and push to get the thing off the line. They're terribly slow. The ride is comfortable. It's not a luxury car, but it's good for a compact SUV. The suspension handles bumps well, and it's quiet on the highway. Cargo space is solid. I've hauled groceries, luggage, camera gear, you name it. The rear seat folded down. You can stuff bigger things in there if you need to. Now, it's not a massive cargo area, but it's practical for everyday use. If I need a truck, I'll go rent one. Now, the rear seat space is decent. Adults can sit back here comfortably for a couple of hours. On longer road trips, it's a bit tighter, and I wouldn't put 3 people back there. 2 across in the back would be totally fine. And I've done 5 to 8 hour trips without any issues whatsoever. The driver's seat has good lumbar support, and the seating position is upright and commanding. Now, let's talk about the technology and software for just a minute. The infotainment system is okay. It's not cutting edge anymore, but it works. And it still has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, unlike newer GM models. The built-in navigation is okay, but I prefer Apple Maps on my phone. The screen is responsive. The interface is pretty straightforward. Keep in mind, this is not Tesla level we're talking about here, but it gets the job done. Now, the one thing that I have a great big disappointment on is Super Cruise, because this is where GM's software problems really, truly show up. I bought this car because it had Super Cruise, and we were planning on doing a lot of road trips in it. As it turned out, that went away pretty quick, especially after we bought the Hyundai. Now, GM Super Cruise on the Bolt, it has a very limited number of highways compared to Super Cruise for every other vehicle, but still, out on the interstate, it works pretty good. It keeps you in the lane and maintains speed, the whole deal. And when it works, it's great. But here's the problem. Super Cruise has failed on this car 3 times. Once because of the OnStar module, once because of the antenna, and once just because it stopped working. This was back in late December, early January. And each time it's failed mid-drive with no warning. It just disengages and tells me to take over. And it did not reset for anything on 2 of those instances. Thus, the telematics control unit had to be replaced and the antenna had to be replaced. Now, I was coming up on the end of 3 years when it failed again in January, and I'm not one of those people who treats this like full self-driving. But when it quits, it's jarring, and it kills your trust in the system. And has GM fixed it? Not really. There have been software updates, but the core issues seem to be the mapping data and the sensor reliability, and GM doesn't seem to be investing anything in improving it. Another problem with General Motors. So Super Cruise for me went from a cool feature to something I barely use anymore because I don't trust it, and it stopped working again. And when it stopped working, I called OnStar, and they told me to take it to the dealership. But I refused to pay a GM dealer $200 just to plug it into an OBD2 port reader. And because it was about to go, I decided to let it go. And then at the end of January, actually early in February, they sent me a message via the OnStar screen telling me that Super Cruise was about to expire. It popped up on the infotainment system at startup. And when that happened, Super Cruise miraculously began to work again. This is absolute proof that when I called them back in December that they did not have me provisioned correctly, I was correct. I called, I complained, and they agreed to extend my service again until April 11th of this year. So they will try to work a deal, and I might keep it. But if they want to charge me $50 a month for this trash, they can keep it, and I have a perfect place where they can store that service, if you know what I mean. And that brings me to software updates in general. Has GM continued to support this car? No, absolutely not. There has not been a software update since 2024. Nothing. Zip. Zilch. Nada. Nothing to make the user experience better. Nothing to make me want to pay to keep their services. Bolt owners like me feel abandoned, forgotten, overlooked. Instead, now GM is focusing on their proprietary Google-based platform. And the Bolt EUV and the Bolt EV, well, they're just legacy. So here's the bottom line on tech. The basics work, but the infotainment system is only mediocre in today's world. And Super Cruise and some of the other connected features, this is where GM's corporate dysfunction shows up greatly. This car is mechanically excellent. The software and tech support, horrible at worst, disappointing at best. Definitely not something that makes me want to go out and buy something new from General Motors. After all, 3 years from now, will they abandon their new software system in lieu of something that makes them more money? It's all about the dollar. And let's talk about charging infrastructure, because this is an area where we have actually gotten a lot better over the past 3 years. When I bought this car in 2023, the charging network was, well, let's be honest, the DC fast charge network was abysmal. You could find chargers, but they weren't always reliable. And there were major gaps in coverage, especially in rural areas here in the South. Fast forward to 2026, and it is a completely different story. The number of chargers has exploded. Electrify America and EVgo are expanding, ChargePoint is maintaining, but Iona and Walmart are coming on strong, and they're starting to pop up everywhere now. Also, the reliability has improved dramatically. And don't forget, I did not have access to the Tesla supercharging network until more than a year after I bought this car. The federal infrastructure bill that President Trump tried to kill is just now kicking in, and some states are building out charging corridors. It's actually getting easy to road trip in an EV now because most commercial entities are realizing, hey, we need EV customers in our businesses too. Walmart's a good example. Electrify America has been my go-to for fast charging for this car. They're on most of the major highways that I travel, and the chargers are fast, 150 kilowatts or better. Only need 55 for this car. I can get from 20 to 80% in about 45 to 50 minutes. Now, Iona is next in line because they're starting to build along the interstate corridors here. EVgo/Pilot Flying J, they're my next go-to. And the good thing about Iona and EVgo, they offer either plug-in charge or auto charge, and that's great. You just plug it in and walk away, the car starts charging. No app necessary. You have to set it up in the app one time, but you don't have to pull it out every time you use it. Now, I've done several road trips in this car, and honestly, it's gotten so much easier. In 2023, I had to plan my routes carefully to make sure I could find chargers. In 2026, I don't worry about it. I just get in the car and go where I need to go, monitor something on PlugShare or one of the other apps, and here we go. The longest trip I did in this car was about 1,500 miles round trip. I charged 4 times each way, and it took maybe an extra hour and a half of waiting compared to a gas car. But I was stopping for food and bathroom breaks at other times anyway, so this was not a big deal. The charging infrastructure has come a long way in 3 years. And if you're considering an EV, don't let charging anxiety stop you. The networks are there, and they're getting better every single day. All right, let's bring this all together now. I made a video recently called Why I'm Done with GM, and I meant it. General Motors as a company has made terrible decisions. They killed the Bolt right when it was hitting its stride. They're not supporting the software. Their dealers are stuck in the ice age, and most treat EV owners with utter contempt after the sale and overcharge them for every minute of maintenance. But this car, this product, it has been exceptional. It's reliable, except for Super Cruise. It's cheap to run. The battery is holding up beautifully. It's practical, and it's comfortable for everyday use. This is a perfect example of how the product can be great even when the company sucks. Now, over 84,000 miles, I've saved approximately $7,500 compared to a similar gas SUV. That's real money. I've avoided approximately 70,000 pounds or 34 tons of CO2 emissions. That's real environmental impact. And the car has been more reliable than any ICE vehicle I've ever owned. It's never been towed anywhere for any reason. The 2027 Bolt that's hitting showrooms now is a completely different car on a completely different platform. It's not an LG Chem platform like this car. The drivetrain in the new Bolt is based on the Equinox EV, as are the electronics that control the drivetrain. The infotainment and control system is the same as all other GM products, Google-based. The battery in the new Bolt, it is a completely new product. So other than the shape of the car and some of the body panels, it's a completely different Bolt than this one. I simply cannot recommend the 2027 Bolt because of GM itself and the fact that the entire drivetrain and electronics package is new. But if you're looking at a used Bolt EUV, absolutely, go out and get one. These cars are holding up well. The battery longevity is excellent, and you can get them for a great price now because of depreciation and a market that is flooded with good used EVs. Just know that GM software is lacking, and support for that is even more lacking. So don't buy it for Super Cruise or over-the-air updates, but buy it because it's a solid, reliable EV with low operating costs. So you might be asking what's next for me. Am I going to keep this car for now? Yes. It's still running great, and I have no reason to replace it. Eventually, I'll probably move to something with more range and faster charging, but I'm in no hurry. This car is doing everything I need it to. And we have the Ioniq 5 for road trips. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably considering an EV, or maybe you're skeptical because of all the FUD that's out there. Well, here's what I want you to take away. Don't believe the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the FUD. Look at real data. Talk to real owners like me, because the fossil fuel industry has a lot to lose if EVs succeed. And they're spending money, billions, every single year to make you afraid. And 3 years in this Bolt, and 6 years total in all of my Bolts. I had a 2017 Bolt before this and put 65,000 miles on it. I have over 150,000 miles under the wheel of Bolts and another 10,000 or so under the wheel of an Ioniq. And I can tell you, the Bolt works. They're reliable, they're cheap to run, and EVs in general, well, like it or not, they're the future. You may say otherwise, and you may poo-poo what I just said in the comments. That's for you and your little red wagon. I don't really care. What I'm telling you is my experience, and you cannot poo-poo my experience. It's mine. The bottom line is the fossil fuel cartels want you to think EVs are unreliable money pits. And after more than 150,000 miles, I can tell you that that is 100% pure, unfiltered FUD, to keep it PG. At the end of the day, this 2023 Bolt has been the best car I have ever owned. It is reliable, it's inexpensive to operate, fun to drive, and great for the environment. And if you still think gasoline is better, then I challenge you to prove your point. Go out and produce your own video refuting this information if you can. I dare you. Now, thanks for listening. I am Jim, reminding you to treat even the ICE owners with kindness. Put a smile on your face when they come up and give you stuff. Help them if you can, and pay it forward if they help you. I hope to see you out there or somewhere along the route from point A to point B, and I will see you all real soon in another video. Take it easy.